Okay, I'm ready.
But before we get started, two hydrogen atoms walked into a bar. The first says to the second, I think I've lost my electron. The second replies, are you sure? To which the first retorts, yes, I'm positive.
That's good. I get those stupid jokes every day from Stephen. Joke a day. She's just cracking herself up.
That one was good. I heard of a joke. I may remember it in the middle, and y'all are just gonna have to bear with me.
Oh my Lord. You never know what you'll get when you have kids.
I'm waiting. Are you going to say your joke?
No, because I said I don't remember it, but if I do at any point in time, I'm just gonna blurt it out.
Oh, okay. And then my final one that I thought was hilarious is, what did the 30-degree angle say to the 90-degree angle?
What?
You think you're always right. No? Okay.
I'm glad I don't have a gun.
Okay, so today we are going to the city of
Nantes.
No.
That's it?
No.
You were concerned you couldn't pronounce that?
Nantes.
I mean, you did his whole name beautifully.
Say his name. Say his name again.
No. But you got to go, no. I had caffeine this morning, by the way. So
I haven't had anything.
So, yes, no. France.
No.
Now, so I've never been to France. Have you guys been to France?
I have many times.
Lena has. You have not been to France. Susan has. She's been many times.
Susan's not here.
Oh, well.
Does she like it?
Yes. Now she
Well, it looks really pretty. And so this city, Nantes, is on the Atlantic. And so it's like a picturesque, seaside city, it looks like.
Ooh.
It's the 6th largest city in France with a population of 309,000 plus.
Where's it by?
Pretty big.
By Paris?
Paris.
I don't know, but
Paris?
and I've never heard of it. I mean, you would think that we'd hear, because like you hear of Nice, France, and Paris, and I'm not sure why we've not heard of Nantes.
Paris.
Is it not with the T at the end?
Yes.
Can you pronounce that again? I didn't get it.
Nantes.
Can you say it in a sentence, please?
And so the surrounding area around Nantes, it has like 973,000 people.
We can't do
This, unlike some of the past, true crimes we've done at the family Annihilators, this is actually quite a large city. Yet it left its mark, and it's still on there to this day because they've not caught this guy. And we'll get into that because there's some controversy. Did he commit suicide? Did he disappear? And it's definitely a metropolitan area, and it's called or considered a gamma world city, meaning it's in the global economic network. So I'm not sure what that means.
Right.
Except it must have some type of influence, and its economy and everything is more global versus, our economy, which should be America first. And
Got to go America first and then do your shirt.
right. So this spread all across France, and I saw this case on Unsolved Mysteries before I got rid of Netflix because of their wonderful show Cuties. Yes. And it reminded me a lot of John List. So I'm curious if you guys think the same thing as we go, because he was the first one we did where he annihilated his entire family, laid them out in a room, etc.
My List. That's what I remember.
And Dear John, which was even better.
But I came up with My List,
Right.
which is a perfect title. Go ahead.
That's why I
Sherry.
said my list, because you kept doing that repeatedly.
Just saying.
My.
Okay. So this one actually was about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago on April 11th. And Estelle Chapon, a neighbor.
You're going to do this the whole thing. I'm
I
not
think
going to be
so.
able to do this podcast because I want to be
Noticed
serious.
that the family home, now are you ready? I mean, we got to get serious because people are going to be listening to this first part like, I am never listening to that podcast again. But
And it is about an annihilator, so.
right, but I gotta do this part. So Estelle, a neighbor, noticed that the family home of Count Xavier Dupont de Liggones and his wife Agnes and their 4 children were unusually quiet. So you can imagine 4 kids and they're teenagers. So always, coming and going. It was unusually quiet and the shutters were closed. And the reason that caught her attention is they never closed their shutters, even if they were on vacation. So she started getting a little bit worried. And on top of that, she did the ironing for Xavier, and then she did alterations for Agnes. So she was, there a lot. And it's really a neat looking place. It's kind of like you would picture, homes in a place like France where they're real tall, and narrow and have the stonework and stuff like that. So she said, quote, their house was usually very lively and busy. So she looked in the mailbox, which I was like, man, is still kind of nosy there. And she noticed a note instructing the mail person to stop delivering any mail there.
That's a weird move.
Yeah,
Which,
no.
Estelle being nosy or the note?
Her being nosy and happen to come upon the note in the mailbox. Like that wouldn't be your first move, I wouldn't think. I wouldn't go to my neighbors immediately to the mailbox.
Right.
Unless I was seeing, like, to me, if it was piling up, then that would indicate they were out of town or dead.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were getting the mail, that would indicate they were there. So maybe that's why she did it.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was building up or not, but Estelle, she checked it. And it reminded me, John List, again, went to the post office to stop all mail.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to remember those details, And so after she looked in their mailbox, she then waited for 2 days. Nothing changed. No activity, no kids, no nothing. So she called the police. And this one's actually extremely frustrating because the way the police responded basically guaranteed that he could get away. So that was the 11th. On the 13th, the police arrived and they, like Estelle, found the doors locked, the shutters closed. They called a locksmith, came, opened the door, and they found everything in the home was in place. So some of the bedrooms, the sheets were removed, some of the closets were opened. But, it's like, well, if they're going out of town, maybe they just stripped all the beds for laundry and, left their closets open, but nothing looked suspicious.
Time out. So we've been watching a lot of these, and that's one of the biggest clues. If sheets and comforters are gone, they didn't go out of town.
Right. I mean, I've never stripped my bed before I went out of town, but
even if you did, they wouldn't be gone.
Exactly. And then to the cops, though, it looked like they had either moved, which I thought was interesting, or they had gone on an extended trip. And that's what Xavier wanted them to think. And, they presume innocent and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't think so. I think he definitely shot his entire family. So there wasn't anything that seemed like foul play, no blood, no nothing. So they didn't investigate. They're just like, hey, lady, probably the nosy neighbor going through people's mail. It's like they're just out of town or maybe they moved and there's nothing here. So they left. And the strange thing, though, was, well, if they moved, then why was one of their cars there? So all of their cars, but one was there, and it was the C5. So she's like, no, the entire family can't be in that car, plus their dogs. Where are their dogs?
The dogs were gone too.
Way that they would fit in that little C5.
Oh, I didn't know they had dogs.
Yeah.
What if anyone heard any kind of barking or anything?
So then the next day, friends and relatives started getting letters. And they got letters from Xavier and Agnes. And in the letters, they said that they were infiltrating an international drug ring.
And what was his profession?
I don't know.
I mean,
It
that's
may
a
be in here,
thing.
but I'm not
Okay.
sure.
No.
So, quote, this will be hard. You won't see us for a while as we're going to change identity, be under protection, and won't be reachable at all. So it's really bizarre. And that's what I don't get. Okay, so if you're trying to get away or not not cause suspicion, why would you say you're infiltrating an international drug ring?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it might be like, hey, we finally got our visas to go to America. We're out of here, something like that, because they've been trying to get to America. But why would you say infiltrating an international drug ring? It's stupid. So for criminals, it's like they go to the most extravagant or extreme. And I think it's like an ego thing.
And they think people believe them.
Right.
Persist.
Right.
Well, and it's so far-fetched. I mean, how in the world would they even check some of these things?
Well, and maybe that's what the purpose is so that they wouldn't even know where to begin. And surprisingly, some actually believed them. Yeah, it's crazy. So some were confused, but some believed the crazy story because they didn't think that either one of them would lie. They were just good people. And so they didn't think that they would. Now, on top of that, Xavier is a count. So he comes from a very prestigious family. They have musketeers in their family line. They've got a castle in the middle of France, a signet ring that has like the family's motto and coat of arms. And so all of these things were very important to Xavier. And so they probably thought, yeah, he's a count. I could see that happening, blah, 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 blah. But the other side of the family, Agnes's family, they were skeptical and they didn't believe that. And that's why it's so important, to stay in touch with your loved ones, to know your loved ones, what would be normal and what wouldn't be normal, because her family would not stop until something happened. And kind of like Jeffrey McDonald's father-in-law. I mean, he kept going. And so sure enough, they're like, no, this isn't right. So they sent a letter to Non-DA. And then on April 15th, the police returned to the house to investigate things more thoroughly. This time, they noticed that photos were missing from the frames. Again, John List did the same thing, but nothing was suspicious. And I'm like, come on, it was so frustrating watching it because you don't disappear and you don't take family pictures out.
Unless, let's say it was like here you have the protection situation. And so I could see you taking those pictures to hide your identity,
but you'd take the frames.
Keep those with you.
Why would you leave the frames there?
Hey, real quick, when you were talking about keep in touch with your loved ones and whatnot, we had talked about this week. You brought up a good point of having code words with people.
Yes.
And we did this, when the kids were younger. And I would just say that it's important to have a code word with family, friends, etc., so that they know something's wrong.
We'll need one.
Yeah. So I was telling Elena that the realtor I work with, especially after I watched, I don't know why I'm smiling, but I watched a true crime show where a realtor was killed in a house. Mm-hmm. And I think it was over in Texas. And that's happened more than people realize.
Yeah, it was in Plano. I watched that a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I told her, I said, what's your plan? What do you what's going on here? Like if you get anything happens, because if she ever had like a feeling like maybe I don't know these people, it's a male without a wife, which you can't even trust that. I mean, there's male female killers. But anyway, she said, if I text you or call you and say I need the red file, then you need to call the police and then call my husband. I'm like, all right, we got it, So, having that code word, I think is important because, if you're in that setting and you feel uncomfortable and you're like, hey, I need something out of a file. for this house. Let me call my assistant real quick. I need the red file. They're not going to suspect that.
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, I think code words are really important. And, to know them and to not be like, what red file? Like you need to
Yeah.
make sure you understand what's happening.
Right.
So we had one, with the kids, and it was during the time period Jay was just being a stinker. And she was with mom, and she called me and she used it. And I said, Jade, you cannot use it with your family. That is not the point of the code word. And she's like, code word. She just kept repeating it.
Yeah, she wanted to come home.
She's being a stinker. Like, you cannot use that for your mama, really. Typical Jade fashion. Do you remember that?
No.
That's funny.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
So the Agnes's family continued to pressure the authorities, resulting in 6 more visits. So the initial concern was on the 11th. They returned the 15th, the 18th, the 20th, the 21st. And on the 21st, the DA finally conducted a press conference at the courthouse stating that the family's disappearance was unusual. They were going to investigate it. While he was doing the press conference, which I'm not sure why you would do a press conference, but whatevs. So while he's doing the press conference, he gets a phone call. So it's live. So he halts the press conference, he answers the phone, and police notified him that they had found several large plastic trash bags bound with tape under the terrace. And inside the bags, they discovered the bodies of Agnes, Arthur, Benoit, and Anne, along with the 2 dogs.
and it took them 6 visits.
Mm-hmm.
Under the terrace.
They obviously didn't search.
Right.
The terrace
So-
outside.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've got pictures. I meant to open those.
Yeah.
So the bedding obviously is, an indicator, like you said. And so all the bodies were wrapped up in duvets and sheets.
You'd think there'd be an odor though after 6 days or 6 different times.
Well, and I'm not sure how they found the bodies. Like, is it because it smelled? Did they have cadaver dogs, or did they notice disturbed dirt? But let me show you a couple pictures of the crime scene. So, and here's what's weird before I share the screen. So they're wrapped in the blankets and duvets, but each one of them had a small religious icon placed next to their body. And they found Thomas's body, who is the heir to the title, in a separate grave. But one body was conspicuously missing, and that was Xavier's body. So obviously he's the prime suspect right off the bat.
Right.
Okay, so let me share my screen and I'll show you the, so this is a picture of them finding the bodies. And obviously you have, the,
So they were kind of buried.
It's
Yeah,
outside of their house.
here's they call this a terrace, but it looks like they were underneath there. So that what's amazing to me is how small of a space that is. So like, I'm curious, was he digging their graves for a long time and they didn't know? Or did he spend all that time digging underneath there right after he killed them? It just seems like such a small area.
If it's interesting, they're outside the house, outside, little part. No dirt would be disturbed and they didn't see it.
Mm-mm. And it looks like it goes all the way across too. So again, it just seems like a lot of effort, to dig underneath there. Now, this is the picture of their house. And so see how the shutters are closed?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't do that, the neighbor said. And then this is them carrying out the bodies once they found them. And of course, I'll show you the family and stuff later. But it just, again, that digging in that area, it just seems like a lot of hard work. Anyway, but I mean, I
would sort of notice he was digging. I mean, wonder why they.
But John List went the extra mile as well.
Yeah, but not digging underneath the area that small. That's just, to me, digging is hard enough, but digging in an area where you're going to have to be on your belly. There's no other way.
Now, were they dug into were they found in the ground or just laying on top?
No, they were found,
shallow grave.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, you know what? No, I think there was some digging because that came up later because he had a bad back. So a lot of people keep saying there's no way he would eliminate his family. But you know what? Let's just discuss that for a second. I've not heard of a single crime. And if there is one out there, I would love to hear about it. But I've not heard of a single crime where the entire family but one is dead and it's not that family member.
Right.
Unless the family member was maybe away at college or, out with friends. But typically, when the entire family's gone, it's usually a family annihilation. And so, to me, of course, him being the only one not dead, it's probably going to be him. But a lot of people are like, no, there's no way because of his back injury. So we'll get to that in a little bit. I just think it's ironic that they're having the press conference after having to, 6 times, hey, something's wrong here. And then, bam, they discover the bodies.
What month was this again?
April.
Okay.
And it really impacted the city quite a bit. You'll see people went by the house a lot and they would leave flowers and their pictures. I mean, people would cry. It was a really, really big deal. And the kids, they were well liked. They had a lot of friends. And so it was a big deal.
Were the funerals together?
Huh?
Probably.
Were the funerals together?
I don't know.
Probably. Together. Yeah. They keep them together.
So the autopsy, it revealed that the 4 children had been drugged with sleeping pills. So they were drugged first, and then Agnes, she didn't have any medication in her system, but she had sleep apnea. And if you've ever heard one of those sleep apnea machines, they are incredibly loud.
Well, they had to keep the kids in
incapacitated.
Yeah, because they were.
Yeah. And so they could tell by the machine that it stopped in the middle of the night at approximately 3 a.m. on the morning of April 3rd or April 4th. They're not sure because, it's going into April 4th. So to me, that 3 a.m. would be the 4th. But
he didn't call anyone until the 11th.
Right. So they're probably killed the 3rd or the 4th. And then the neighbor finally was like, hey, something's going on the 11th. But it wasn't until the 21st that the police finally took this case seriously. And by that time, he had a good 17 days.
Maybe there wasn't an odor because they were buried. Because you would smell something after that month.
Mom's on the odor.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, they say inspectors or detectives, whatever they're called in various countries, that there's a distinct odor, and apparently it happens quickly.
It does. Yeah, it's pretty fast. So they believe that she was killed first, and each victim was killed by 2 bullets from a .22 caliber long rifle. No neighbors heard any gunshots. And when they looked over the crime scene, they did not find, and this is crazy, a single trace of blood.
Oh.
Yeah. And they didn't. Huh?
Because the bedding was gone.
Well, and they had sleeping pills, and they were shot.
Now, how can you not hear a rifle?
Well, no.
Well, it's 22, probably, in the middle of the night. I could see that, if you're sleeping heavily. But the fact that there's no blowback, the 22, I mean, it is a small caliber, but still you'd think there'd be something. So he either cleaned the crime scene very, very well. Excuse me.
Like Lana said, a pillow or something on top.
Right. something, because
The bedding was gone, so.
exactly. So we know that, but you would think, even like blood would get into the mattress, but I guess not. And then there was also no fingerprints or DNA from anyone at all.
Oh.
So he cleaned it.
He cleaned it really good. In fact, I mean, if he's still alive, he could probably start a house cleaning business and do very well.
He cleaned it so good. Crazy.
Okay. Now, for obvious reasons, innocent until proven guilty, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to him as a perpetrator. So I wanted to kind of go into exactly who is this guy and who was his family. So Xavier and Agnes, they met in the early 1980s. He was 20, she was 17, and they loved each other very, very much. But he had like a wanderlust. He wanted to kind of see the world a little bit, have some adventure, travel around. So he broke up with her and took off. To me, I'd be like, wow, I mean, I don't know if it was a mutual decision, but yeah, they broke up, and he returned a year later and Agnes was pregnant.
Oh.
So it obviously wasn't him.
Did she come from money like he did?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
And then, in spite of his traditional and conservative background, he married her and adopted the child and gave that child his name. So this one is Arthur. Okay, so he is the oldest, but he is not his biological child. But the traditional conservative background, very similar again to John List. Mm-hmm. And then, and by the way, in France at that time, that was unheard of, that a man, especially a count, would marry this woman and take that child as his own.
Right.
So then over the years, they grew their family. They had another son, Thomas. So even though he was the second son, he was the one that was the official heir of the title. It would not have gone to Arthur because of, him not being his biological. Then they had Anne and Benoit, and they seemed picture perfect. Agnes worked at a Catholic school, and she was very personable. People liked her. Arthur was 20 years old, and he was pursuing a degree at a private Catholic college. And he also seemed to be the jokester. So let me pull up their pictures. So this is a family. So the one laying across the kids, that's Arthur. And then that's Thomas, and then Anne, and then Benoit.
Yeah.
This is Xavier and Agnes and their daughter.
Like the mother.
Very much.
Here's another picture of them.
Arthur's.
Yeah, so they you can tell that Arthur's definitely the jokester. I mean, that's pretty evident.
They seem genuinely happy too.
And then this is the dad with the daughter. I think she's absolutely gorgeous.
We have another one of those arm things.
Right. Like Ted Bundy, the Ted Bundy pose. And then this is all of them together. So this probably is the most recent picture of all of them. I'm not sure where the parents are looking off to, but again, you see Arthur, he's got that huge smile on his face. I just think Anne is so pretty, goodness. And, but anyway, so that's the family. And Thomas, so the official heir, he was 18. He was very shy. He was really sweet, but he was obsessed with music, and he was attending college as well. Anne was 16, the only girl, and she was actually a model for mail order catalogs. And she was the most studious of the four children. And she also attended a Catholic school. And then Benoit was the youngest. He was 13, and he attended the same school as Anne. And he also loved music, especially the drums. So I'm sure it was a loud house. But when they started digging, like most traditional family annihilators, where it's either another woman or the marriage looks like it's ending, or there's financial problems, or all of the above, things weren't looking very good for Xavier. So outwardly, he appeared like a successful businessman, nobility, heir to a title after his father passes away, but he was in deep financial trouble. So what happened was in the early 2000s, they had tried to unsuccessfully to move to Florida, and they spent nearly all of their money to try to get to America, and they weren't able to. So they spent all that money. They weren't allowed into the country. I'm not sure why, but that right there started this downward spiral of failure. And so then bailiffs, I guess that's what debt collectors are called there, were on his back for debt. His companies weren't ever really successful. And then also they were about to lose the house, and the money they were living on was from an inheritance for Agnes. So I guess she did come from some money, and it was almost gone. At the same time, things were deteriorating for Agnes and Xavier as well. In fact, there's a police report from 2005 where Agnes called them because Xavier assaulted Arthur. And so
And that's the oldest one.
that's the oldest one that's not his blood.
Yeah, I mean, you have father-son issues sometimes, especially when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
But you still see the common denominator of finances and failure.
And it's almost like the loss of control over the family too. Because to me, what epitomizes a family annihilator is loss of control and then loss of face. They're going to look like failures. Their businesses, their marriage, everything disintegrates. And it's just too much for the ego. It's too much for them to take. So it's like they get this giant eraser and want to erase their entire past.
You know anything about his parents? How he grew up?
We'll get into that in a second. I don't know much about his mom. But his dad, there's a little bit about him. It was hard to find much on this case. So Agnes had also
How'd you come across this one?
Unsolved Mysteries,
Okay.
like I stated at the beginning.
I just remembered. Thank you for that, Sherry. As soon as you said Unsolved Mysteries.
And as soon as you said that, I knew she would say, I said that already.
Sorry, my apologies.
Thank you.
So she also had talked to others, like at work and some friends, that Xavier was too judgmental, too quick to argue, too rigid, too military. There's no more tenderness between us, no more attention, no softness, no sex. When I ask him if he's happy, his response is the same. Get this. Yes, I am, but if we could all die tomorrow, that would be better.
No.
I'm
That's
like,
a flag.
Yeah, it's a big flag.
that's a huge flag. That's like a flag that takes up the entire house, just waving it around. Like, to me, I've never heard anyone say, oh yeah, I'm happy, but if we could all die tomorrow, I'd be better.
But again, like the last podcast, if it's out of your mind of any kind of possibility that someone would do that anyway, so you don't think anything about it.
See, that's why I think true crime podcasts are beneficial, because if you listen to them, then you start recognizing that's not something that's normal.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
True.
So that's all a quote. And so it appears that almost like that whole like traditional thing where the kids maybe are not holding the same traditional values as the dad, and they're maybe doing things that he doesn't approve of. And it's like this tightening down of control, but also anger, the police report. It just almost seems like there's a pattern that happens with these family annihilators. So that, guys, anyone who's listening, if any family member says, yeah, I'm happy, but if we were all dead tomorrow, it'd be much better, that's probably a red flag. You need to go ahead and pack up everything, get the kids out, and don't go back. But I do think you're right. It's like, and we talked about this, I think in the first podcast, or maybe it was the season 1, where your brain does not compute that those statements equal, I'm going to kill everybody.
Right.
Especially if you have a relationship with someone.
Right. And it always begins good. Like they were teenage lovers. He rescued her from disgrace and married her. And adopted her child and gave him his name. I mean, it's like, and I've heard this, like, a lot of people, they worry about aging and things like that. And they, worry, like women, especially, like maybe they've gained a little bit of weight as they go, and they begin to wonder if maybe they're not as attractive to their husband, things like that. Well, if you're married to, a douchebag, maybe that would be a problem. But and to me, like, I will have a disclaimer that I feel like how you take care of yourself physically is a form of love to me, because, as you age, I want to do fun things and enjoy life. Right. So that's a little bit different. But when you have that beginning where it's so emotionally tied and you've got a good thing going, you still see your spouse the same way years later. It's very interesting. Mm-hmm. And it's like the brain, neurons that fire together, wire together, that emotion that's tied to the initial connection. It's like it freezes your spouse in your brain as that person that you married.
Right. If it's good. Yeah.
If it's good. So it takes a lot to undo that. Yeah. And it seems like for some people, they never see it. Kind of like the lady that married John List, and they're sitting there getting the tail end of the Unsolved Mission, or America's Most Wanted, of him being the family annihilator, and it never entered her mind that it was her husband sitting next to her on the couch.
Yeah.
Though it looked just like him.
Right. Accountant.
Right.
Religious.
Right.
So on top of the usual patterns, here's another one. He was also having an affair with a mistress in Paris. Mm-hmm. And he'd even borrowed 50,000 euros from her in desperation. So he killed them in 2011, but in 2010, in an email, he told her that he was ruined, at rock bottom like never before. Quote, "I am awake almost every night with these morbid ideas, burning down the house after giving everyone sleeping pills, or killing myself so that Agnes could get 600,000 euros. In my case, my life will end in the next few months if I don't get 25,000 euros immediately." So he emailed that to his mistress, which I think is weird. Like, well, maybe I should just kill myself so my wife, of whom I'm unfaithful to with you, can get life insurance. It's a strange thing.
The very first comment is jacked up. That's a major flag in a relationship with someone. Mm-hmm. Talking about giving his family sleeping pills and burning down the house. What did she think was going to happen to the thing?
Right. It's like details. It's details. He's too specific on how he would do that. Like, to me, that's huge. So if you're a mistress and you receive an email like that, you probably should notify the wife.
Right. Or police.
And then get away from this lunatic, because number one, he's a crybaby. And number two, he's, got specific details on how he's going to kill his family.
And specifically says morbid thoughts. I have these morbid thoughts. Or ideas. Was it ideas?
And the reason I say he's a crybaby, I mean, how dramatic do you need to be? I'm going to die if I don't get this money. Come on. Go get a construction job. I don't know.
No. Come on, son.
Come on, son. So we could see that he's already got his plan. You know what I mean? Like, he's already planning this thing out. He's already thinking about the different ways he can do it. And again, he's like John List and a lot of family annihilators, that the only way out that he sees is to annihilate his entire family. So he has, or had, a best friend. His name's Bruno. And when they were interviewing Bruno, which I'm sure it's a name in France that they use, but it just sounds weird. I don't know why. Why does it sound weird? Like Bruno. Is it just the way, Bruno?
It's definitely a European name.
Cut this part out, but a lot of dogs are named Bruno.
Is that what's cracking me up? That's probably what's cracking me up. Okay. So Bruno said, and he was his best friend and dog. You know what I'm saying? I think you have a point. But anyway, that he was vain, proud, and he would not want to lose face. It was as if he was on a mission to save his children from finding out he was a loser.
You know, though, a lot of normal men think that way too, though. They don't kill their families, but.
Well, yeah, I think that for a man to be a failure to his family or in his profession stuff would be a definite hit to the ego.
Right.
And I think the reason it would be a definite hit to the ego is they've never had a baby from their groin come out. You know, so when you're a woman, loins, yes, not groin, loins. When your loins are exposed for all to see, ego goes away.
Right.
Okay. So now we're like 3 months past the murders. Okay. So, before. So this is January 20th, 2011. So we already know that good old Xavier is wanting to annihilate his family. He's already got an idea of how he wants to do it. But then his dad suddenly died of a heart attack. His name is Hubert. And at this point, I'm sure Xavier is hoping that there's some money from his dad dying or something he could sell to get him out of the mess that he's in. Plus, he was wanting to find the family signet ring. That was very important to him. So he started working on clearing out his father's apartment, but he didn't find anything except a .22 caliber long rifle.
Does he have siblings?
No siblings were mentioned. So I'm not sure, but in the show and in my research, I didn't see any siblings. So Herbert's neighbor remembered something. The last time he saw Xavier, he said he had, quote, a very dark look in his eyes. Now, you know, you could be like, yeah. Are you saying that, you know, post killing his family? But I don't know. I mean, if he saw Xavier, you know, several times at least visiting his father, and then all of a sudden he's got this look in his eyes, I could see that. It's like Chris Watt's neighbor. He's like, something's going on. Now, it wouldn't have taken a rocket scientist, because watching the video, you can see that Chris is avoiding the footage. He's looking all around. He's on his phone. He's got, you know, body language of his head on his hands. You only do that if you're freaking out. You know, I normally don't put my hands on my head, you know. So that was pretty obvious. But this guy's like, there's something going on. And so then 13 days later, on February 2nd, Xavier obtains a firearms license, even though he never had any interest whatsoever previously with weapons. And he started going to a shooting range, and to spend quality time with his two sons that he would be murdering soon. He would take them as well to learn how to shoot.
Wow.
And then he asked his instructor about silencers. To me, there's only one reason you need a silencer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they need to be outlawed. I don't believe in that. But why do you need a silencer?
The instructor didn't notice or think that's all.
He asked him about them. I don't think the instructor, again, it's like your day-to-day life. You know, if you're a firearms expert and you have a shooting range, maybe you see a purpose for silencers that others don't.
I could say around here in the country, I mean, although we can actually, because we're in the county, we can shoot freely, but I could see if you were really practicing or something, being a little bit more.
Or maybe hunting and you don't want to scare off other wildlife, maybe something like that. And guns are super loud, so I could see. But he bought one on March 12th, which would explain why the neighbors didn't hear any gunshots.
Right.
He also bought some garbage bags and cement.
Were they buried in cement
Some of it was found on the bodies. So I don't know, like, if he was going to mix it up and encase them, and it, you know, like y'all saw the space and it was just too little space to do that, or he was fatigued after his cleanup. I'm not sure, but some was found on the bodies, but I don't know if it was just powder and he's hoping to cement them in, or if it was a mixture.
Oh, because it does rain in Paris.
Right. But we're not in Paris. We're in Nantes.
It could be close to Paris.
Okay. So the autopsy, I want to go into that a little bit because it was written, like the coroner put, that the manner of death was, quote, methodical execution. That's what he put. So Xavier killed his wife and 3 all 3 kids except for Thomas. So he was later. He killed them on Saturday, April 2nd or Sunday, April 3rd, and just the time of death. Because remember, they know that the machine, the CPAP machine, was turned off at 3 a.m. So as far as the time of death, it appears that it was between that Saturday and Sunday.
Did you say Thomas was killed later?
Mm-hmm. And this is what's crazy about it. He was killed April 5th. So Thomas had already gone back to college.
Oh.
And his father told him he had to come back.
Oh.
And he told him that your mother has had a bicycle accident. She's in the hospital in a coma, and we don't know if she'll come out of it. It's very serious. You have to come home. That to me just sucks.
Yeah. Waited a couple of days.
Yeah. Like, let Thomas live. I mean, you're already an idiot. And it's like you literally call him back. And it just is frustrating. So Thomas returned Tuesday evening. And then he and his father went out to eat dinner, according to witness statements, but they didn't talk much. The people that saw them noticed that they weren't talking a lot. And then Thomas was last heard from at midnight, and he sent a text message to a friend who responded right back, but then never heard back from Thomas. And so if you're a young kid texting, you're going to text back.
Right.
So that's what they're going by, is that he probably was killed right after he sent that text message, or he was already drugged and he was sleepy and he fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was killed during the night on Tuesday into Wednesday. So some also think that Xavier hesitated to kill him because that would end the family line. So I guess Xavier didn't have any siblings, for sure didn't have a brother, because to kill his oldest son after he's killed everybody else, there would be no family line left.
Yeah.
Yeah, his biological son.
Yeah.
Yeah, and since he had the silencer, then the sleeping pills weren't for the kids to wake up. That was mercy, I think.
And it was for the neighbors so they wouldn't hear. Yeah.
Because they could have rushed them. They were older.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, especially Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
So, they say he hesitated. I don't think so. I don't think he hesitated at all. I mean, if ego was that big of a deal, I don't think that he would want his family line to continue, knowing that he killed his entire family except for one. Like, to me, it's just like, let's just wipe them all out,
Why did they say that he hesitated or think?
Because he could have killed them when Thomas was there, because Thomas was there when he killed everybody else. And so they're thinking, no, he had gone back to school. So they're thinking that he probably could have killed all of them when Thomas was there. And he didn't. He let them go back.
Just like List, they're embarrassed and don't want anyone to think they're failures, but they don't care if someone thinks they're murderers.
Right. So then they believe, the police, that Xavier stayed in the house for a week because several acquaintances saw him in Nantes. He then left forever on April 10th. So remember, the neighbor thought something was weird on April 11th. Mm-hmm. And they got speed cameras and like credit card usage. He wasn't in a hurry to escape. So he visited some of the places where he and Agnes first met and lived.
And that was unusual. He didn't do that typically.
Yeah. So he visited places where they lived during the early years of their marriage and places where the kids were born. So they think what he was doing was he was revisiting happy times and saying goodbye to his past, kind of like the sculptor that knew that John List would be wearing the same glasses because it would remind him of better times and more successful times.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy. So his last known stop was this town I cannot even pronounce. And he spent the night at a Formula One hotel. Surveillance cameras then recorded him crossing the hotel parking lot carrying a bag with an obvious long object at the bottom believed to be the rifle he used to kill his family. Police fully expected to find his dead body in the surrounding cliffs or mountains, but after an extensive search of holes, caves, crevices, etc., no trace was ever found.
That's weird. He would take the rifle with him. So I could see why they would think it would be suicide.
Yeah, which is a common thing with family annihilators. But normally they kill themselves on site.
But he wanted to say goodbye to everything.
That's true. That's true. So that's why a lot of people believe he committed suicide. I'm not so sure. I'm inclined to think he might have, but again, one reason is most family annihilators kill themselves right after. Second, why would he clean up the crime scene, hide the bodies, send letters of elaborate tales of drug infiltration, stop the mail, close the shutters, unless he was planning on escaping and he needed time to get away? So either, like you said, Elena, he was wanting time to say his last goodbyes, and all of that was to buy him some time, or he wanted to escape and that bought him some time.
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
I think he committed suicide.
You do. Mm-hmm. My thought goes to he's in America somewhere.
That was my initial thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's been a couple sightings since we'll get into in a second where he disappeared. So I was like, okay, would that be an easy place to get out of the country? He could have easily taken a boat, a mountain path, or a train to Italy or Croatia. Easily. And I think he would have blended in both places because of his appearance. He knew both Spanish and English. So some think that he went from there to Latin America, and he looks like everybody else, so he's not going to stand out.
He might have remarried and had more children.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be terrible?
I feel like if you were annihilating your family, I couldn't see them having more children in the future.
Right.
Possibly.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, he can look so different. Like here he is here.
Yeah.
And then here, and then
Very European looking.
here, so he can definitely look different in different pictures.
Yeah.
He has one of those faces. This looks totally different. This is the last known picture of him getting cash at an ATM.
How old was he?
Glasses.
I believe in his 40s, which again, the 40s seem to be like a big deal for these family annihilators. But like he looks just so different to me between all these pictures that I could see it being hard to find him. Or people, thinking they saw him and they didn't because he just looks so average. Now, the episode that was on Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries was called House of Terror. And after people watched that, 100 tips came in. And in October 2019, a man believed to be Xavier was arrested at Scotland's Glasgow airport. Here's what's crazy. I didn't even know this could happen. His fingerprints partially matched Xavier. Have y'all heard of that?
No.
So family members, can family members do that?
I mean, your fingerprints are supposed to be totally different.
Was there a full fingerprint available, or did he get rid of some of it? That supposedly happens.
I don't know.
All his fingerprints were the same?
They partially matched. So I had no idea that was a thing. I didn't know fingerprints could partially match anybody's. And so they had to do DNA, and DNA excluded him. To me, that's crazy. So, I mean,
I thought he wiped the house clean. Where'd they get the DNA?
Well, over in Europe, I'm sure they have fingerprints more than over here.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah. And like your, maybe passport. Maybe you have to have it for that, or
You
I
have
don't
a
know.
picture of what he looked like when he was arrested?
No, I couldn't find a picture of the man. Mm-mm. And then another tip came in 2018. They got a call that a monk at Saint Desert des Carmes looked like Xavier, and it was located in a village that Xavier walked away into the desert where he was last seen. But what was crazy is when the police went there, all the monks had taken a vow of silence. So it made it hard for them to find out anything, but he wasn't found. And then this picture right here was one of the tips. Let me find it, that came in. Oops.
That's strange about the fingerprints.
Yeah, the only
Partially
thing I can
matching.
think of is if they were literally like still manually or visibly trying to match them. Ooh, he looks like a Queens dude.
Oh, Eddie Mercury.
Freddie
So
Mercury.
Freddie Mercury.
this was one of the tips that came in, as you could see, in 2003, and someone at the beach knew about the case and thought this guy looked like him. And so they took a picture, and I could see, with the facial hair.
Look at the hairline. That's what I was going to look at that. That's significant. He's got a big widow's peak.
Yeah. Same glasses.
Can't see the glasses.
Yeah, I don't think he's wearing glasses.
Yeah, he is. See?
Oh.
Oh.
Does he have a full bottom lip?
It looks like it.
No, I meant on the other one.
Yeah.
Wow. The hairline and that lip.
Looks
Go
just
back to
like
his
him.
nose one more time. I would say that's pretty spot on. See how his nose is narrow, but it's kind of wide at the
Bottom. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, they were able to confirm this was not him. It was his doppelganger.
Wow.
But that's what makes it so tough. They've never found a body. They thoroughly searched that area. And so if he committed suicide, I mean, I don't know how vast the area is, but still you think they'd find something somewhere. But they never did.
water, mountains. Do you know the terrain?
Definitely mountainous. They have caves and crevices, but they said they thoroughly searched them, but that's taken the word of people that it took 6 visits to get them to do anything. So I'm not sure how that works there, but they never found him. So to this day, he's on the loose, and I personally think he's alive,
I do too.
and hopefully they'll find him soon. I remember on the John List, when they aired that show on America's Most Wanted, remember it's like the next day or something, they found the guy. To me, he looks a little more distinct than this guy does. So it's going to be a tough one. And I don't know if they'll ever solve it, if they'll ever find him. Now, so the psychology, I think he was definitely a disappointed and anomic, which is the socially awkward, etc. But I also think he's probably self-righteous because the background of being an accountant, he was more traditional and conservative. He was growing more rigid and inflexible. He was getting in fights with his kids that were in the teenage years, which that seems to kind of be a pattern to a degree, where you've got the kids are getting their own mind and they're deciding what they want to do and be. And it's like it sends these people over the edge.
Losing control.
Yeah. So I think he definitely had some of that. I don't think he was as rigid as John List, but he, who believed his, killing his family would save him from sin, which is BS. We know that's not the case. But he did bury them, remember, with the religious objects.
Mm-hmm.
So being Catholic and all of that, maybe he knew his family, would want that. He was having the affair. He was definitely disappointed with life. So I wanted to refresh just a little bit on the different types of annihilators and see what you guys think that he fell into. And this is from psychcentral.com. So the self-righteous, this killer seeks to locate blame for his crimes upon the mother whom he holds responsible for the breakdown of the family. This may involve the killer phoning his partner before the murder to explain what he's about to do. For these men, their breadwinner status is central to their idea of the ideal family.
Yeah, I mean, he let his mistress know in a way, but we don't know what the mother and son dynamic was. That would be very interesting because there's definitely a pattern there.
Well, the mother of their children, not necessarily the killer's mother.
I'm thinking killer's mother.
Yeah, no, this one's like, basically they hold their spouse responsible
I don't think that one.
the breakdown of the family. And so if he was like real rigid and inflexible, she was probably like, she was more personable. She was probably maybe a little more lax in dealing with the kids. And so, and he wasn't able to be the breadwinner. They're having to live on her inheritance. You know, there's just, I could see definitely self-righteous. The disappointed family annihilator believes his family has let him down or has acted in ways to undermine or destroy his vision of the ideal family life. An example may be disappointment the children are not following the traditional religious or cultural customs of the father.
I don't think we saw that.
No.
Well, I mean, he was religious, or he was traditional conservative. The kids were not. He's got the whole tradition and background of his family line. Maybe.
He was traditional and the kids weren't.
Well, most teenagers aren't. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and the cops are called on him for attacking Arthur. Why was he attacking Arthur? So there was obviously something going on in the family dynamic where he felt like he was losing control. And it had to have probably been pretty severe for Agnes to call, because when I look at like some of the friends and family members of her, and you look at her pictures, she looked like a sweetheart. You know, she looked, and they said she was very personable. So I could see how she would be more inclined and on the children's side when it came to maybe arguments and stuff. And if she is the type of personality I think she is, it would have been really hard for her to call the police on her husband. Like, I think it had to be unusual for her to do that, because most people that personality type, they would try to be a peacemaker and calm everybody down. So and this is just me, she must have had some, fear there of this is getting out of hand.
Back to why, if he's alive or not, I was a Methodist, and it's sort of the Catholic beliefs, a few of them. Catholics used to believe if you committed suicide, that's the only sin you won't go to heaven for.
True.
Right.
So if he was real religious, there's no way he would kill himself.
True.
Right.
The affair, and we saw this in one other, I can't remember, but the affair and the annihilation of the family was okay in the religious life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Lists, yeah.
The anomic is, in these cases, the family has become firmly linked in the mind of the killer to the economy. So the father sees family as a result of his economic success, allowing him to display his achievements. In other words, his family is his achievement.
Yeah.
However, if the father becomes an economic failure, he sees a family as no longer serving this function.
That's him.
I think that's probably the closest. I think you could probably have all of them to a degree, but he was definitely failing economically. Mm-hmm. And then paranoid, those who perceive an external threat to the family, this is often social services or the legal system, which the father fears will side against him and take away the children. Here, the murder is motivated by a twisted desire to protect the family. I don't see that one at all. I think definitely the anomic was really big. And with the anomic, usually they are socially stunted, which I'm not sure if he was. He looked like he could have some fun as well. But I think the economic was a big trigger for him. And if they were like in private colleges and private schools, all of that was about to come crashing down.
Right.
In all of these cases, masculinities and perceptions of power sets the background for the crimes. The family role of the father is central to their ideas of masculinity, and the murders represent a last-ditch effort to perform a masculine role.
Yep. Crazy.
So what do y'all think? I mean,
there's definitely some common denominators there.
Mm-hmm.
Very common, some patterns we're seeing. The masculinity, losing control, financial.
Yep. I'm the father of this household. What I say goes. It's like it's like all these people, they didn't grow. You know what I mean? It's like they were stuck in this idea. And I'm all for, I'm conservative in my beliefs of what family should look like and what, life should look like. But I also am willing to grow as a person, and how I interact with other people. Like with Kent, when he was little, I was a stinker until he's about 4 or 5. And it's like, being a drill sergeant, what am I doing? And then I recognized like his personality was totally different. So I had to adjust. Like it was similar enough where I thought he was like me. But then when I realized he needed step by step and only give him the one thing to do at the time, I was like, okay, me being a D, I'm like, do this, but he needed just that one thing and to be able to focus on that. And so I began to adjust myself to his personality. And so it seems like with a lot of these people, they don't grow. It's like they are stuck and the past becomes more important to them than the future.
And their success, that stunts them.
Yeah.
They go on and have the same kind of jobs, marry the same kind of people.
It's like
He definitely was a business owner. I'm curious what type of business he did, because to me, it's like, hey, you guys meet someone that knows Spanish and French and English, and they look like this dude and they own this business. You probably want to check them out.
I'm gonna have to watch that one now. I haven't watched it.
Can you? Because you can't get Netflix.
No,
Well, maybe on disc, maybe.
Pony and Carriage brings it.
All right. So I think it's break time, and then we're going to save the best for last.
I have to.
Yes.
Well, that probably wasn't a good way to phrase that.
Right.
No. Who are we doing next?
Jeffrey McDonald.
Last one. Yes. And Elena she's reading the book, so she's going to be able to give us some tidbits.
Done.
Oh, Fatal Vision.
Mm-hmm.
It was really spooky back when it first came out. I bought it right away.
It's very detailed, but not in an annoying type of way.
And they were friends.
And you know the story behind that, yeah.
McDonald thinks that.
But he's so egotistical that I could see how he would.
But he let him go to his apartment.
Because
again, there was proof
egotistical.
He thought he could trust him too. Because look how devastated he got when he found out.
We were best friends.
Yeah.
I remember that interview.
I think it's always ironic when murderers are feeling betrayed and upset about it. Outline of a Murder is a Mr. Joseph production. What do you think, Joseph?